Thank you very much. I'm going to cheat a little bit and use the first maybe 10 minutes to talk about the future, not just learning where there are no schools, partly because one of the things that happens with age is you've been in the future more often. And by that I mean you say, well, the future's 10 years off, and then suddenly the 10 years have arrived. And then you talk about a future that's 10 years off, and that arrives. And I feel I've been there so many times that one of the things you do is you look back at how you looked at the future. And I found that sort of the future of the future is, for me, slightly different than it was 20, 30, even 40 years ago, and that there are kind of four ways I looked at it over these periods of time, and I'm going to use these four ways as a means of being a little outspoken about certain topics. Now, the easiest of those is what I called here the extrapolative future, where you just sort of look at where you've been and where you're going, and you can predict quite easily where you will be in some period of time. When I started the Media Lab in 1985, or at least it opened its doors for business in 85, I remember telling Kodak, look, image sensors, the price is going to go down, the resolution's going to go up, and film is toast. And they told me constantly, it's not toast, it's going to go on, and the resolution, and the feel, and the warmth, and all of these things, and it's gone. So predictably. Music, it's not on physical media, predictable. Movies, not on physical media, predictable. And books, I still know people who tell me that physical books will exist. Well, they will, the way opera does and the way ballet does, but you will not deliver them that way. It doesn't make sense. So that extrapolative future is the easiest one. That's the one you can, and people will be in denial all the time, and they'll have vested interests, and CEOs of very reputable companies will tell me 10 years later, Nicholas, I couldn't admit to you, I knew it, but it was my fiduciary responsibility to deny it. And I said, wow, your fiduciary responsibility to deny it. I've heard that many times. Then there's kind of the orthogonal future, the one you didn't even think is coming. It's kind of in your peripheral vision. And I think the best vision that humans have about the future is peripheral vision. And wireless is one of those. I mean, we saw it coming, but it really came very fast, and some of the things that happened 30 years ago changed telecommunications like it had never been changed before. It took Bangkok, I was involved in Thailand, Bangkok 7 years to install a telecommunications system that was broadband and digging up streets and so on in the 1980s, and it took Bolivia 7 days to install wireless throughout the whole country. These were just phenomenal orthogonal changes that happened. The fact that we're not going to own things. Ownership. Detroit's in denial. We'll need 1/10 the number of cars when they're self-driving. 1/10. Cities won't have parking, which represents 35% of cities. And the traffic in cities, I've heard numbers as high as 40%, are people looking for parking spaces. So all that's going to change. And people, again, are in denial. Kickstarter, Tinder. I mean, there are many of these that are orthogonal and very, very important. Then there are the metaphorical ones, the metaphorical futures. The desktop metaphor. I was very much part of it in the 70s, where people didn't believe that you could take the metaphor of working on a desk or books in a library or spatial sort of recollection in general and then sort of move it to the computer world. And, of course, we all take it for granted today. But it was by using metaphors that we got to that future, and it's again, another way of looking at the future. And then there's the contrarian one. Sorry about the wrapped text. That's my fault. the contrarian future is the one that interests me the most, and it's the segue into what I'm supposed to be talking about. Nuclear power is a good one. Nuclear power is the only power. We need nuclear power. And people denying that in Germany and Japan are completely delaying nuclear power and fusion, which is what we need. And yet we're going to instead have a world filled with windmills and solar panels, which are taking enormous amounts of area, and we should be making toaster-sized fusion devices. Contrarian, but probably correct. Genetically modified food. Whole Foods is apparently not going to sort of sell food that's genetically modified. But the only hope for humanity in terms of feeding the planet is genetically modified food. So I believe that, whether I'm right or wrong, doesn't matter. It's a contrarian view of the future. The Internet of Things. I sat in a lecture last week where a young man talked about the Internet of Things, something that I've been very fond of and talked about and written about for years. And clearly, everything will eventually talk to every other thing. So all things will be connected. And things, whether they are, the physical size of dust or the size of toasters or the size of airplanes, is, again, just part of the same spectrum. And this young man showed us how, with your iPhone, you could unlock doors, you could control your oven, and this was sort of part of the intelligence of devices. And as I was listening to him, I realized all of what he was talking about was basically sucking the intelligence out of the device, putting it on your iPhone so you could unlock your door or start your oven. But really, the intelligence I remembered, and has now become contrarian, is when you put a chicken into the oven, it says, aha, chicken. And it recognizes the chicken, and it knows how to cook the chicken. Not that it moves the display panel from the oven to my iPhone. Or you come up to your door, and you're carrying bundles. It recognizes you, even with a ski cap. And it says, oh, of course, and it opens the door. And it opens the door without letting 7 dogs in behind you, or other things that an intelligent doorknob might do. But what's happened today is that that's almost gone by the wayside, and people are looking at moving the face panels, moving the control panels to your iPhone, which, God forbid, if you forget it someplace, and then usually it's Wi-Fi, and those of you who have an iPhone, you know how terrible it is at seeking Wi-Fi signals that are locked and sitting there spinning around because it can't find the Wi-Fi signal. So what do? You turn it off. And then you get home and you can't unlock the door because you don't have the Wi-Fi signal turned on. How many of you have Sonos in your home? Well, there are a few hands that go. For those of you who aren't, this is an iPhone, and it's a very large system and highly acclaimed. I think it's terrible. And the reason I think it's terrible is because you have to control it with your iPhone. I get home, I've got to remember to turn on Wi-Fi. Then it turns on and it says, I'm trying to turn on the radio now. All I'm doing is trying to turn on the radio. And the iPhone says, Sonos software needs to be updated. Oh, so you update the software. Then Apple tells you, type in your password. Well, of course, Apple has just forced me to change my password to something that has uppercase and numbers and strange characters in it. So I'm sitting saying, what is my Apple? What is my password? I type it in wrong 3 times. Finally, it gets it correct. Finally, it downloads Sonos. And about 8 minutes later, I can turn on the radio. So there's something wrong about that. And so it's a contrarian view, perhaps,